Hello, first graders. This is Miss Norton from 1D, and I am here today to talk to you about how to tell time. And today we're going to focus on how to tell time to the hour and to the half hour. So if we look next, we have our aim. So it says, I can tell and write time to the hour and half hour on a digital clock and an analog clock. So you just heard me say the words digital and analog. In the first picture, where it is that blue with the 12 and the 2 zeros, that is called a digital clock. And a digital clock is usually a little bit easier to read than an analog clock. It just has the hour and then the minutes. A digital clock you would usually find on something like a cell phone, or you might see it on your computer, or you might have an alarm clock like this. Next to the digital clock, we have something called an analog clock. And analog clocks have been around for a lot longer than digital clocks. And usually you'd see an analog clock in a building like a school, or maybe a doctor's office, or maybe your house. If any of your parents have a watch, it might be an analog clock. So those are just some different examples that we have. As you'll see in the picture though, there's a lot more going on with an analog clock. So the next slide is going to tell us a little bit more about them. So here it says the parts of the analog clock. You see that there is a big yellow circle. That is actually called the face of the clock. And the way I remember that is my face is round and the face of an analog clock is usually round. And that's just the surface, the front of the clock, where you see all the numbers and the hands. The next thing that I want to talk about is there is that red hand that has the word hour on it. And the hour hand on an analog clock is always, always, always the shorter hand. And the way that I remember that is that the word hour is shorter than the word minute. Next to the hour hand, we have the minute hand, which you'll see is blue. And like I said, the minute hand is always, always, always the longer hand on the clock. And I remember that because the word minute is longer than the word hour. You'll notice though that on the face of the clock, there are some other things, some numbers. So in red, you notice that there are the numbers 1 to 12. And those big numbers stand for the hours on a clock. And so on this clock, they just so happen to match up. The red numbers, which are hours, match up with the red hour hand. All the way around the clock, you'll also see the numbers that go from 0 to 60. That is because, boys and girls, there are 60 minutes in an hour. So if you take one full cycle all the way around the clock, that means that an hour has passed. So we're going to get a little bit more into that in the next few slides. So this slide tells us that there are 24 hours in a day. And the day is kind of split in half by 12 hours, which are considered AM hours, and 12 hours, which are considered PM hours. You're probably thinking in your head, Miss Norton, what does AM stand for? And what does PM stand for? Those little abbreviations came from a long time ago, but the way that we remember what AM stands for is we pretend that the A stands for around or at, and then the M stands for morning. And then for PM, we think of the P meaning past, morning. So I'm thinking in my head of things I do in the AM. In the AM, I like to eat my breakfast. In the AM, I get dressed for school. In the AM, I brush my teeth and get in my car to go to work. So those are all things that I do at morning time in the AM. For PM, I do things like eat my dinner. I watch some television. I get ready to go to bed. So those are things I do past morning. I do later on in the day. So this slide tells us how many minutes we have in an hour. And like I said before, there are 60 minutes in an hour. And so if you see, I'm going to bring up my clock. And like I said, you see that there are the numbers that go all the way from 0 to 60. And the way that we count the minutes in the hour is we count by fives. So go like this: 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. There's these little blue dashes that go all the way around the clock if we wanted to count by ones to get to 60. But oh me, oh my, we know that would take so much longer than counting by fives. So we have all this information now, and you're probably thinking, but how do I say the time? If I see these numbers on the digital clock, how do I read them? The first thing it tells me to do is to say the hour. On this digital clock, boys and girls, the hour is 12. Next, it says to say the minutes. On this digital clock, the minutes are 30. Okay, so I would read it like this: 12:30. And if it was morning, I would say AM. And if it was afternoon, I would say PM. So now we're going to be talking more specifically about how to read time to the hour. So when you're reading time to the hour, the minute hand is always on the 12. So if you see this clock here, the time on the digital clock says 1 o'clock. Okay, I'm not saying any minutes after the 1. I'm not saying 1:15. I'm not saying 1:10. I'm just saying 1 o'clock because there's 2 zeros in the minutes place. There aren't any minutes for me to say. So I just say 1 o'clock. And like I said, when we're talking about time to the hour, that minute hand is always, always, always up on the 12. So you're going to notice a pattern. We're going to go through all the times to the hour. So this is 1 o'clock. My hour hand is on the 1. My minute hand stays on the 12. 2 o'clock. Hour hand on the 2. Minute hand stays on the 12. 3 o'clock. Hour hand on the 3. Minute hand stays on the 12. 4 o'clock. Hour hand on the 4. Minute hand stays on the 12. I think you guys are seeing this pattern. 5 o'clock, hour hand on the 5, minute hand stays on the 12. 6 o'clock, hour hand on the 6, minute hand stays on the 12. 7 o'clock, hour hand on the 7, minute hand stays on the 12. 8, hour hand on the 8, minute hand stays on the 12. 9 o'clock, hour hand on the 9, minute hand stays on the 12. 10 o'clock, hour hand stays on the 10, minute hand is on the 12. 11 o'clock, hour hand on the 11, and minute hand stays on the 12. And then 12 o'clock, the hour hand and the minute hand are on the 12. Tricky, tricky. All right. So now that you are pros, I'm sure, at reading time to the hour, next we have how you read time to the half hour. So when you read time to the half hour, you take that minute hand from the 12 and instead it goes down to the 6. It goes halfway around that clock because it's the half hour. So the minute hand is always, always, always on the 6. 12:30, minute hand on the 6. 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, 4:30, 5:30, 6:30, 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, 10:30, 11:30, and now it is your turn, boys and girls. I have some questions to see how close attention you were paying to this video. So I have some questions, and I want you to, if you can, put the answers to the question in the comments, or if you can't do that, send your teachers a dojo message so that they know that you were listening to this video. All right, here we go. First question is, would you wake up to go to school in the AM or the PM? Think about it. Question 2, do you go to bed in the AM or the PM? Think about it. Question 3, do you say the hour or the minutes first when you're reading the time? Question 4, what number is the hand on when you are telling the time to the hour? So where would the minute hand be? And where would the hour hand be? Last question, what number is the hand on when you are telling time to the half hour? So where would that minute hand be? Thank you so much, boys and girls, for listening to this video on time. If you have any questions, feel free to ask your teachers, and I hope you guys have a great day.